It's Friday night, you've had a week. A long week. The kind of week where your boss asked for one more thing, your kid got sent home from school, and your car started making that noise again. You're tired. You're stressed. You deserve a break. So you order takeout. Not the cheap kind. The good kind. The kind with the spring rolls and the fried rice and the extra sauce that costs $5, but you get it anyway because why not? $47. While you're waiting, you scroll through your phone. And you see it. A sale. 20% off everything at that clothing store you like. You've been wanting a new sweater. Nothing fancy. Just something cozy for the weekend. $72. Then you remember. You've been meaning to get that book. The one your friend recommended. $12 on Kindle. One click buy. Done. You're not thinking about the math. You're not thinking about the budget. You're just living, treating yourself, recovering from the week. Then Saturday morning comes. You wake up. You make coffee. You open your banking app to check your balance. And then you see it. All those little charges. The takeout. The sweater. The book. The random app purchase you forgot about. The coffee you grabbed on the way home from work yesterday. And that feeling hits you. That familiar, awful feeling. Shame. Guilt. I did it again. I spent too much. I have no self-control. What's wrong with me? You tell yourself you'll do better next week. You'll cut back. You'll be more disciplined. You'll finally stick to that budget. But you've told yourself that before. 100 times. And it never works. Because here's the thing. Willpower is not a plan. Discipline is not a strategy. And shame is not a motivator. It's a punishment. And punishment doesn't change behavior. It just makes you feel bad about the behavior you're already doing. So what if there was another way? What if instead of trying to spend less, you gave yourself permission to spend? What if instead of feeling guilty every time you bought something, you felt good about it? What if the secret to saving more wasn't spending less, but spending differently? Hi, what's up? And I spend way too much time thinking about guilt. Like, probably an unhealthy amount. Not the, I forgot to call my mom, kind of guilt. The, I bought a coffee and now I feel like a failure, kind of guilt. The kind that makes people give up on their financial goals entirely because they can't be perfect. If you're someone who's ever felt that sick feeling in your stomach after checking your bank account, even though you didn't actually spend that much, make sure to hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up if this helps you out. Because what I'm about to show you might change how you think about spending forever. And I promise you, by the end of this video, you're going to see why guilt is not your friend, why willpower is a trap, and why giving yourself an allowance might be the smartest financial decision you ever make. Now, before we dive in, I want to make something clear. Most people think investing is about having a lot of money. The truth? It's about what you keep. I'm building a community at the Frugal Investor newsletter where we strip away the hype and focus on high-impact, low-cost wealth building. Get your copy of the 15-day blueprint for wealth and financial autonomy and join a group of like-minded investors who prioritize long-term gains over short-term trends. Link is in the description. Alright, let's get into it. The shame spiral. Let's talk about the shame spiral. Because if you've ever tried to budget, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Here's how it works. You decide you're going to be good with money. You make a budget. You track your spending. You're going to save 20% of your income. You're going to cut out all the extras. You're going to be disciplined. And for a few days, it works. You bring your lunch. You skip the coffee. You say no to happy hour. Then something happens. You have a bad day. Or you're really tired. Or your friend invites you to dinner and you don't want to be the weird one who says no. You spend money. Not a lot, but some. $10, $20, maybe $50. And then the shame hits. I messed up. I ruined my budget. I have no willpower. Why can't I just be good with money? So you say, screw it. I already messed up. Might as well enjoy the rest of the month. And you spend more. And more. And by the end of the month, you've spent twice what you meant to. Then you feel worse. So you give up entirely. You stop tracking. You stop budgeting. You tell yourself you'll try again next month. Or next year. Or when you make more money. That's the shame spiral. And it's not a failure of willpower. It's a failure of design. Because the way most people budget is designed to make you feel bad. It's designed to punish you for being human. And punishment doesn't work. It just makes you feel worse. The psychology of deprivation. This is where it gets really interesting. Because there's a reason the shame spiral happens. It's called deprivation psychology. When you tell yourself you can't have something, what happens? You want it more. That's just how the human brain works. The forbidden fruit is always the sweetest. So when you make a budget that cuts out all the fun stuff, all you can think about is the fun stuff. You're not thinking about your savings goals. You're thinking about the pizza you can't have, the coffee you can't have, the new sweater you can't buy. And eventually, your brain rebels. It says, I'm tired of being deprived. I'm going to take what I want. And you binge, you spend, you break your budget, and then you feel guilty. Now, here's what most people don't realize. This isn't a character flaw. This is biology. Your brain is wired to seek pleasure and avoid pain. When you create a budget based on deprivation, you're creating a life of pain. And your brain will do anything to escape that pain. The solution isn't more willpower. The solution isn't more discipline. The solution is to remove deprivation from the equation entirely. To create a system where spending doesn't feel like failure. Where you can enjoy your money without guilt. Where you can be human without punishing yourself. The allowance solution. This is where the guilt-free spending account comes in. The idea is simple. You give yourself an allowance. Just like when you were a kid. A set amount of money, every week or every month, that you're allowed to spend on whatever you want. No questions asked. No guilt allowed. Now, you might be thinking, Nick, I'm an adult. I don't need an allowance. I can just spend money. But that's the problem. You can spend money. And you do. But you feel bad about it. The allowance removes the bad feeling. It gives you permission. It tells your brain, this money is for fun. Spend it. Enjoy it. No guilt. And here's the magic. When you give yourself permission to spend, you actually spend less. Because the deprivation is gone. The forbidden fruit isn't forbidden anymore. So you don't crave it as much. Let me say that again. When you give yourself permission to spend, you spend less. That's not intuitive. It sounds backwards. But it's true. And it's backed by research. A study from the University of Chicago found that people who gave themselves a discretionary spending budget spent less overall than people who tried to restrict all spending. Why? Because the restriction created deprivation, and deprivation created binging. The allowance removed the deprivation, so the binging stopped. Think about it like dieting. When you tell yourself you can never eat carbs again, what happens? You dream about bread. You obsess about pasta. And eventually, you eat an entire loaf of garlic bread in your car and feel terrible about yourself. But when you tell yourself you can have a small amount of carbs every day, the obsession goes away. You have your bread. You enjoy it. And you don't binge. The same is true with money. When you tell yourself you can never spend on fun, you obsess. You binge. You feel guilty. But when you give yourself a fun budget, you spend intentionally. You enjoy it. And you don't overspend. The math of guilt-free spending now. Let's talk about the math. Because this is where it gets really good. Let's say you make $4,000 a month after taxes. Under the 1-5-6-5-2-0 rule we've talked about before, that breaks down like this. 15% to your future self. That's $600. 65% to necessities. That's $2,600. 20% to guilt-free fun. That's $800. $800 a month. $200 a week. That's your allowance. That's money you are allowed to spend on anything you want. No questions. No guilt. No shame. Now, here's what happens when you give yourself that allowance. First, you stop feeling guilty about small purchases. That coffee? It comes out of your allowance. No guilt. That takeout? Allowance. No guilt. That impulse buy? Allowance. No guilt. Second, you stop binging. Because you're not depriving yourself. You know you have $200 a week for fun. So you don't feel the need to spend it all at once. You can spread it out. You can enjoy it. Third, you start spending more intentionally. When you have a fixed amount of fun money, you start to think about what you actually want. Do you want that $5 coffee every day? That's $25 a week. Do you want to save that $25 for a nice dinner on Saturday? That's a choice. And because you have a limit, you actually think about it. Fourth, you stop the shame spiral. When you spend from your allowance, there's no shame. It's allowed. It's planned. It's guilt-free. So you don't feel bad. And because you don't feel bad, you don't say, screw it, and blow the whole budget. Now, here's the counterintuitive part. People who use a guilt-free spending account actually save more. Not less. More. Why? Because they're not trying to save on everything. They're saving intentionally on the big stuff. They're not exhausted from saying no to 100 small things. So they have the energy to say yes to the important things. Like investing. Like paying down debt. Like building wealth. Let me tell you about someone I know. Let's call her Michelle. Michelle was a guilt spender. Every time she bought something, she felt bad. Coffee, $5, guilt. Lunch with friends, $20, guilt. A new shirt, $40, guilt. And because she felt guilty about everything, she also felt constantly deprived. So every few weeks, she'd have a blowout. A shopping spree. A weekend of takeout and delivery and impulse buys. $300, $400, sometimes $5. Then she'd feel terrible. She'd look at her bank account and want to cry. She'd tell herself she was going to be better. And then she'd do it again. She came to me and said, "I have no self-control. I'm just bad with money." I said, "You don't have a self-control problem. You have a design problem. You're trying to be perfect. And perfection isn't sustainable." We set up a guilt-free spending account. $200 a week. Cash. In an envelope. When the envelope was empty, no more spending until next week. The first week, she spent all $200 by Wednesday. Then she had nothing for the rest of the week. That was painful, but it was also informative. She saw exactly where her money was going. The second week, she was more careful. She spent $150. She had $50 left over at the end of the week. She rolled it over to the next week. The third week, she spent $120. She was starting to be intentional. She was asking herself, "Do I really want this? Or am I just bored?" Within 2 months, she was consistently spending about $100 a week on fun. She was saving the other $100. Not because she was depriving herself. Because she didn't want to spend it. She had learned to enjoy her money without needing to spend it all. At the end of the year, she had saved over $5,000 from her fun budget alone. And she felt better. Less guilt. Less shame. Less stress. She told me, "I used to think I needed more money to be happy. But I just needed permission to spend what I already had without feeling bad." How to set up your guilt-free spending account. Alright, so you're convinced. You want to try it. But how do you actually set it up? Here's the action plan. Step 1. Calculate your fun number. Start with your monthly take-home pay. Multiply it by 20%. That's your starting point. If you can't do 20%, do 15. Or 10. Or whatever you can. The number matters less than the system. For someone making $4,000 a month, 20% is $800. That's $200 a week. That's almost $30 a day. That's plenty. But here's the thing. That's not just coffee money. That's all your fun money. Eating out, coffee, drinks, movies, concerts, new clothes, hobbies, gifts, travel. Everything that's not a necessity comes out of this account. Step 2. Choose your vehicle. How do you want to hold this money? There are a few options. Cash in an envelope. This is the most tactile. The most real. When the envelope is empty, you're done. No more spending. It's physically impossible. A separate bank account. A checking account just for fun money. You transfer your allowance every week or every month. When it's gone, it's gone. This works well if you don't like carrying cash. A prepaid debit card. Load it with your allowance. Use it for fun spending. When it's empty, you're done. This gives you the separation without the hassle of cash. The key is separation. Your fun money needs to be separate from your bill money. Separate from your savings. Separate from everything else. When you see your fun money running low, you know you need to slow down. Step 3. Automate the transfer. Set up an automatic transfer from your main account to your fun account. Every week, or every payday, or every month, whatever works for you. When it's automated, you don't have to think about it. It just happens. Your fun money shows up. You spend it. No guilt. Step 4. Track your categories. Here's where it gets interesting. Most people don't know where their fun money goes. They just spend and feel bad. With a guilt-free account, you can track. Not because you have to. Because you want to. Because it's interesting. Because it helps you spend more intentionally. Maybe you realize you're spending $100 a week on coffee and snacks. That's okay. That's your choice. But now you know. And knowing gives you the power to change if you want to. Maybe you decide you'd rather spend that $100 on a nice dinner once a week instead of small things every day. That's a choice. And it's a choice you can make because you have the data. Step 5. Roll over the surplus. Here's the secret sauce. If you don't spend all your fun money in a week, roll it over. Add it to next week's allowance. Or save it for something bigger. This changes everything. Because now you're not trying to spend your allowance. You're trying to save it. Not because you have to. Because you want to. Because you're working towards something. Want to buy something expensive? A new laptop. A vacation. A piece of furniture. You don't need to feel guilty. You just save your fun money for a few weeks. Or a few months. And then you buy it. With cash. With no guilt. That's the power of the guilt-free spending account. It turns spending from something you feel bad about into something you feel good about. The counterintuitive truth. This is where it gets really interesting. Because here's the counterintuitive truth. When you give yourself permission to spend, you actually want to save more. Let me explain. When you're constantly telling yourself no, spending feels like rebellion. It feels like freedom. It feels like sticking it to the man. And that makes it more appealing. But when you give yourself permission, spending loses its charge. It's not rebellious anymore. It's just spending. And without the rebellion, you start to see it for what it is. A transaction. You give money, you get something. And you start to ask yourself, is this worth it? Sometimes the answer is yes. That coffee is worth $5. That dinner is worth $40. That concert ticket is worth $80. Sometimes the answer is no. That random thing on Amazon isn't worth it. That second drink isn't worth it. That impulse purchase isn't worth it. And when you start asking that question, you start spending less. Not because you're depriving yourself. Because you're choosing. And choice is freedom. Choice is power. Choice is the opposite of deprivation. So the guilt-free spending account doesn't just stop the shame spiral. It actually changes your relationship with money. It turns spending from something you do because you can't help yourself into something you do because you want to. And that shift? That's everything. The rollover superpower. I want to talk about the rollover. Because this is where the real wealth building happens. Let's say you have a $200 a week allowance. That's $800 a month. $10,000 a year. Now, let's say you don't spend all of it. You spend $150 a week. That's $600 a month. That leaves $200 a month that you don't spend. What do you do with that $200? You could roll it over. Let it accumulate. Use it for something big. Or you could invest it. $200 a month. Invest it at 8% for 30 years. That's $300,000. $300,000. From not spending your fun money. But here's the thing. You're not depriving yourself. You're still spending $150 a week. That's plenty. That's coffee, lunches, dinners, movies, whatever. You're not suffering. You're just being intentional. And that $200 a month that you're not spending? It's not because you're forcing yourself. It's because you genuinely don't want to spend it. Because you've realized that the future freedom is worth more than the temporary pleasure. That's the superpower. That's what happens when you remove guilt from the equation. You stop spending out of rebellion and start saving out of choice. And choice is the foundation of wealth. I really hope this video brought you some value today. If it did, comment more down below. I'm reading through those to decide what topics to cover next, so definitely let me know if you want more of this. Look, here's the bottom line. Guilt is not a motivator. It's a punishment. And you can't punish yourself into wealth. You can only shame yourself into giving up. The guilt-free spending account is the opposite of shame. It's permission. It's freedom. It's the realization that you can enjoy your money today and build wealth for tomorrow. Not either, or both. So give yourself an allowance. Set up a separate account. Automate the transfer. And then spend. Without guilt. Without shame. Without the spiral. And watch what happens. You'll probably spend less. You'll definitely feel better. And you might just find that the path to wealth isn't about saying no to everything. It's about saying yes to the things that matter, and letting the rest go. That's not deprivation. That's freedom. Alright, I'll see you in the next one.